question.
Well, I'll tell you what they think, since you seem to be dodging the question, which is they think that you're probably lying, right?
Sure, good. I'm glad that they think that. I'm actually happy. My favorite feeling is when people when they underestimate me.
By parity
My
of
favorite
reasoning,
feeling is when people underestimate me.
parity of reasoning, when you say that there were plenty of dissenting opinions and refuse to cite who they are, we're inclined to think that you're lying, right?
Good. I'm glad. you fool. So I'm still waiting. So are you gonna? So let's get to my question so you can answer it.
Why would you make a claim?
Let's get to my answer.
Why would you make a claim that you can't defend?
So let's get to my question.
Why would you make a claim that you can't defend?
I'm not answering any of your questions until you answer mine.
Okay, so then you can't actually defend the claim.
Oh, I can, but you can't defend against my question. You haven't answered a single one of my questions. So by parity of reasoning, you're lying about being able to understand how clocks work.
Did I say that I couldn't answer a question?
Well, I'm waiting for you. You obviously have failed so far to answer my question.
Hey, let me ask you this.
By parity of reasoning, you're lying about being able to answer my question.
Let me ask you this.
No, I'm not answering. I'm not answering until you answer my question.
I'll ask the smart people in the room then.
No, Jack, I'm waiting. So, look, I know that this conversation is going to end without my question answered.
Can somebody mute
That's how it's going to end.
while I'm talking? So for the smart people in the room, if you had a watch that was synchronized with another watch, and then you accelerated one watch, right, and left the other one, let's say on Earth, unaccelerated, so that you ended up slowing down one watch over the other, would they still be in sync?
Depends on what you mean by accelerated.
What do you mean? Depends on what I mean by accelerated.
Well, how do you accelerate it?
No,
he means to set one watch ahead of the other, not to physically move.
It would no longer be synchronized.
Yeah, they'd be out of sync.
From when I've briefly looked into general relativity, and I'll probably struggle to defend it. If you were to fly one on a spaceship to the point where they didn't beat at what seemed apparently the same time, they would still be synchronized, but it would be different.
They wouldn't be synchronized because when
they wouldn't be synchronized from our perspective.
They wouldn't be synchronized from any perspective, right? Once one speed has changed, right, and you compare the two clocks, they'd be out of sync.
No.
So you could synchronize two clocks.
So when they flew the nuclear clock around the world a few times or something, I don't remember what the experiment was. What it seemed from what I've read or looked into, the nuclear clock that came back was actually in the future.
It wasn't in the future.
Why?
Because it was in the present.
Either one.
No, it was in the present. The two clocks were in the present, and they were not synchronized.
Why?
What do you mean why? They reflected different times.
No, they didn't reflect the times. One traveled through time differently than the other.
What difference does that make? They
One
reflected
traveled to the
different
future
times.
from our perspective.
They reflected different times. Right? If you had one clock as set at 12 o'clock, right? And then you had another clock, and you had the other clock set at 12 o'clock, right? And then 5 minutes went by in which one was accelerated and the other was not, right? And one said 12:05 and the other said, I don't know, what would be the amount after you accelerated it?
This is
some different
going
number,
back though,
right? So those two wouldn't be reflecting the same time, right? They'd be out of sync.
This is dumbing down what I'm trying to get at.
I don't understand. You said that they weren't existing at the same time, but they are, right?
No, I
but they're
wasn't saying that.
reporting
No, I
different
wasn't saying
times.
Well,
You
the
said
other
one
ones,
clock
no, the
was in
ones
the
reporting the
future.
future
The weird thing is that
or the
this
past, whichever way
whole
around it
the
is.
weird thing is that this whole thought experiment is just assuming that the different clocks, because of the circumstances, are measuring
Also,
time differently.
another criticism of synchronization. It's not the only definition.
Sorry, is your view that clocks don't measure time?
Depends on what you mean by measure.
That's obscure. I mean, what could I mean?
So when you have a thermometer, the chemical reaction causes the chemicals to expand, or not the chemical reaction. The heat causes the chemical to expand, so you can measure the expansion. So you're not actually measuring the temperature; you're measuring the expansion.
So you don't think thermometers measure temperature?
They do, but by proxy.
What would it mean to measure it directly?
Oh man, this is hilarious.
Maybe Ace can answer that question.
It seems like a vacuous distinction.
But yeah, maybe is Ace muted? Because that might be pertinent to Ace's.
Well, I just
perspective.
don't. I'm not really sure what your intervention in the discussion
It is
is,
absolutely
right?
look. It is
Because
absolutely
Ace
pertinent.
sorry, because Ace.
Look, so look, when
I mean,
people
just
talk
a
about a
minute,
food
just a
being
minute,
spicy,
just
look,
a
when
minute,
food
Ace,
talk
just-
about when people talk
just a
about food
minute,
being
Ace,
spicy, what they mean
just
is
a
that they're
minute.
not actually.
Just a minute, Astus. So what I'm trying to understand is, see, Astus is saying that clocks don't measure time, right? And I'm just trying to understand whether you're agreeing with him or are you agreeing with the people who think that clocks do measure time, so-called smart people.
Are you ready?
I don't
Jack?
know.
Oh,
I
no?
would have thought. So if I'm using the thermometer example as instead of measuring the heat, because we're not measuring the vibration, we're measuring the expansion. They might actually disjoint somehow. There might be some sort of effect we can put on a thermometer where the expansion does not reflect the temperature.
But then it wouldn't accurately measure temperature, right?
But we would be thinking that we're measuring, like when we take the measurements.
But the claim isn't that anytime somebody thinks that a thermometer is at a certain number, that must mean that the temperature is at the number that the thermometer reports, right? It's that what it means for something to be a thermometer, right, is that it measures temperature.
Rulers don't measure length, clocks don't measure time, thermometers don't measure heat. It's all just a big misunderstanding.
Yeah, see, the thing is, it seems like
But there is something that does measure
have-
heat.
you
That
have-
does it directly.
What's that?
Our skin.
I don't
This
understand.
is exactly what I'm getting at. Orson's exactly right here. Actually, this is just like
No, it's
just
the
like saying,
nerves.
look, this is just
No,
like
it's the brain
saying,
interpreting
look,
the nerves.
look. This is like saying that you perceive spiciness when you're eating a food, right? You're not perceiving this abstract quality of spiciness. You're perceiving the capsaicin, right? And so the spiciness is this indirect reference that we have, and the referent itself is the capsaicin. So, like I said, Jack, I've been waiting very patiently, and I'm very interested in for you to answer the single question that I asked you 20 minutes ago. Do you have the ability to answer that question, or are you just merely going to flounder again?
Okay, so the smart people here are having some difficulty understanding something about Astus's view. So I don't know, maybe
Floundering.
maybe Josh, you could help clarify this. Is Astus's claim that rulers measure length and clocks don't measure time, or is he claiming that rulers don't measure length, thermometers don't measure temperature, and clocks don't measure time?
Well, I mean, he's already said that clocks measure time. So he's just contradicting himself.
He said
ever
clocks
seen
measure time?
Yeah. In
He
When
said-
did he say that?
Said that
previous
clocks divide the day. That's my argument. That clocks divide the day.
Right, no,
That's
there's
an
another problem with
argument?
the way, there's a problem with length as well, because you don't know what a meter is.
He said in the colloquial
That
sense,
you-
clocks measure time.
Where do we have a standard
What's
meter
the
somewhere?
non-colloquial
Like we have a
sense?
standard kilogram somewhere, which is like a material, like a ball, like a lead ball in France. I don't know if we have a meter, which is specifically a meter. Imagine if you have an object that is referenced as a meter. If it heats up, it's going to be larger, and there's going to be more problems in the quantum level as well. So measuring length is difficult.
I don't
that
think you're
precisely.
understanding. I don't think you're understanding what I'm trying to clarify. Right.
Well, how many?
What I'm trying to clarify is whether he has some kind of principled objection to there being measuring
because
devices.
the problem is a
being
meter is
measuring-
abstract.
but just a minute. To
Length
whether
is abstract.
whether he has a principled objection to measuring devices as such, right? So that rulers don't really measure length, temperatures don't really measure. I'm sorry,
Well, I'll take that
thermometers
up.
don't really measure temperature,
I'll take that up. Yeah.
and clocks don't measure time, right?
I'll take that up.
That could be one position that he has, or he could say that we're just misled about clocks, right? Because I think this is the Darth Dawkins view. I don't think Darth Dawkins says, or what do you think, Josh? I don't think Darth Dawkins says that rulers don't measure length, right? He seems to think there's something specific about clocks that make them different from rulers and thermometers. But tell you the truth, I don't know what Aestus's view is, right? Other than that he agrees with EF about the clocks. So this is what I'm trying to get clarity on. Can anybody shed some light on this?
Would you like me to now unmute Ace so he can explain it to you?
Well, maybe Josh, do you have anything to say about it?
No, I'm doing work right now, so just listening.
Oh,
Can-
okay. So might as
can
well.
I
Yeah,
comment
go
on-
ahead. Sure, go ahead.
So,
You comment.
I have a question, Jack. Then. How many Planck lengths are in a meter?
I don't know.
Then how do we know what a meter is?
Well, I mean that's a question we could discuss, but I'm not really seeing the relevance of it.
Because we might not know the answer. So then a ruler might not be measuring length.
Look, dude, there's not going to be a fucking fact of the matter, right? Like, any criteria.
But there is a factor of the matter of like tasting
Right,
spice. Like they
shut
said.
the fuck up. I wasn't done with my goddamn explanation, jackass. So, like, there's not going to be a fact of the matter, but the fact that it's a naming convention doesn't mean that it's just because there's some naming convention doesn't mean that it's not measurable because of that. So I don't know why the fuck you would offer that up as evidence. Oh, Orson, you're the irrational one. Never mind.
All right, there you go.
Well, so the difference between clocks and rulers is that rulers is a relative measurement of a thing with another thing. However, time is not a thing, it's ephemeral and has no basis for comparison against anything else. So a clock is really just a relative measurement of hands on a face in movement. But it's not measuring time. That is to say that it isn't sampling some value of time.
So they're both relative measures, is what you're saying.
Well, look, as I've been saying, a number of divisions that a clock generates. Okay, this is very clear. And look, Jack keeps avoiding my question. Okay, so I don't want anybody else to talk, just me and Jack. I've got a single question for Jack, and he's failed to answer this question. So, Jack, you put a clock in a time machine. The time machine, the clock will not run backwards. So how can you say that that clock is giving a measurement of what time it is?
You need to start over. Your audio fucked up.
Oh, I apologize. Okay, fine. You put a clock in a time machine, Jack. The time machine.
Is someone fucking DDoSing him or what?
No.
No, he gets on while he's...
Sure, man. The timing there is fucking unreal.
Yeah.
Like someone just fucking turned on a bunch of bots and
Damn.
started flooding the fucking
It's,
router.
it's an inside job.
Yeah, I know. I'm back from
You know,
so,
it's
okay.
when you
So
feel
look,
those
okay,
those
like I said,
hugs from baby
the
Jesus.
clock in a time machine, Jack.
Nice.
Time machine goes backwards in the clock would not start running backwards when it's going backwards. Why do you think that a clock measures time if it won't accurately describe that it's going back?
Like, for example, like
I know what he'd say though. He'd say it's no longer accurately measuring time.
Yeah, but it's irrelevant. We're trying to understand what Aestus
I've
is.
got a pertinent issue to that though.
We're trying to understand what Aestus's view is. Is he saying that rulers likewise don't measure length and thermometers likewise don't measure temperatures, or is he saying that there's some special issue with respect to clocks that doesn't apply to rulers or thermometers? Because see, I don't think that's Darth Dawkins'
that's what
view.
I articulated for you, is that rulers and thermometers are sampling something directly. There's a basis of comparison by some state that the ruler or the thermometer is engaged in. But that is not true for a clock.
What is
How
a
do you
ruler
think they
relative to?
identify a second?
Let's see if Ace's audio is fixed.
Okay, yeah. Hopefully that was it.
Well, wait a minute. How do you think they identify a second, though? It's the same process. They measure the amount that they stop it at the point where some reaction occurs, right?
Yeah, but I mean,
The
really,
second
you
is
could
identified. It seems like it's the same process as the way they establish like an inch or temperature.
No, I didn't hit. What was that?
But you're not actually sampling anything.
What do you mean by
moving one thing from somewhere else and then saying, well, that's duration? You didn't actually sample time. You just moved two things apart from one another.
I don't know. I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, is there confusion about sampling?
I think the lag issues mean some people are talking past each other now.
I've been very patient, okay? So I want Jack to answer my question, okay? So Jack, are you there?
Oh, well, Aestus, the question on the table is whether you have a general objection to measuring devices as such.
We'll get to that. Look, Jack, I'm not answering any of your questions until you answer my question, okay? So we'll get to that. We'll get to that in just a sec after you answer my question, okay?
Well, no, that's what we're discussing.
Not right now. That's irrelevant to my question. So
this is
you're gonna no, Jack, you're gonna answer my question. I'm not answering a single question. I am not answering a single question until you answer my question.
So this is sort of one of your big penis things?
Yeah, Jack, it is. So so you're gonna answer my question, okay, Jack?
I don't see why I would answer your question. Right now, what we're trying to figure out is whether your view. Just a minute.
Right now,
we're trying to.
It's
just
completely irrelevant, Jack.
Just a minute. Just a minute. Right now, we're trying to figure out is whether you have a general objection to measuring devices as such, right? Or whether you think there's a special problem for clocks, right? Now, if you can't answer that question, all I can do is turn to the smart people in the room and we can speculate about what your view is.
Jack, why don't you just be gracious and answer his question?
It's completely irrelevant, Jack. It's completely irrelevant.
Because he's just trying to dodge the objection, right?
No, you're trying to dodge my question, Jack. You've been dodging my question since I came on here.
So you're saying Jack, you're not dodging the objection?
Jack, you are dodging my question right now.
So you're saying you are dodging the objection?
Well, you are. You definitely are dodging mine. I'm right here. Look, I will answer your question.
I'm dodging my own objection, but my objection is to you. How would I be dodging?
You're an idiot. No, you're an idiot. You're misunderstanding what I'm saying. You are dodging my question, Jack.
Well, how about we put it this way, guys?
I thought the question was fairly straightforward, right? The question is,
you're right. You're right. My question. You're right. My question is very straightforward, Jack, and you keep dodging
my question.
No, I'm talking about my question.
Hold on, Ace. Jack, what if it could be said that by answering Ace's question, we will get to some kind of a greater fundamental understanding of Ace's position relative to your objections?
I mean, anybody could say anything.
Well, let's explore that. Why don't you be gracious and answer Ace's question, and let's see if it actually works out that way.
Why would I want to be gracious to Aestus?
What's the question?
Do you have something to lose?
Yeah, the entertainment and watching Aestus try to wriggle out of dodging this question.
So you're being
dodging my question. It's
What's
really
the fucking question? Shut the fuck up. What's the question?
Josh, I'm asking Jack this. You can give your own answer, but this is for Jack.
Jack, he claims to have
shit, cocklicker. Just fucking ask the goddamn question.
I already asked it 25 minutes
ago.
ago.
I didn't fucking hear it, stupid shit.
Look, it's not for you. It's for Jack.
I don't give a fuck who it's for. Ask the fucking question.
I'm not giving it to you. I'm giving it to Jack.
Ask the fucking question, you cocklicker.
No, bitch.
You're such a fucking pussy, Ace.
Josh, how could he have a
so
big
Jack,
measure length?
Jack, are you ready? Are you ready to answer my question, Jack?
Well,
or are you gonna keep dodging?
It's Josh who wants to hear the question.
Ask the fucking question.
Josh is irrelevant.
You're gonna have to ask it to Jack anyway, so just ask the fucking question, AIDS Piss.
I'm not asking it to you, Josh.
Ask the fucking question.
So Jack, are you ready to answer my question, Jack?
No, it's Josh who wants to hear the question. I'm not interested.
Too bad. You're not going to hear it then.
Okay, so we can go back.
Well, shit.
We can go back to the question that you're dodging, which is, do you have?
I'm not answering. I am answering 0 questions.
That's what I said. That's what I said. We're going back to the question that you're dodging.
Dodging my question.
Yeah,
you little dodger.
We can go back to the question that you're dodging now.
No, I'm not dodging. I'm not dodging any questions. I have an answer for that question.
You answered it?
Not yet.
Oh, so when are you going to answer it?
After you answer my question.
So you are dodging.
No, you're the one that's dodging, Jack. I would have already answered your question, Jack. I would have already answered your question.
You've answered the question?
I would have already answered your question.
That's not what I asked you.
I know, you fool.
Okay, well, I'll repeat my question. Have you answered the question?
I'm not answering any more of your questions, Jack, until you answer mine.
So you're dodging?
No, you're the one that's dodging, you fool.
You're not dodging?
No, I'm not dodging.
So you've answered the question.
No, because you haven't.
Oh, so you are dodging.
Nope, you're the one that's dodging.
Wait a minute. I thought you said
it's not like there's a fucking binary there. You guys could both fucking be dodging. You're dodging, he's dodging, so what? Just ask the fucking question, cocklicker.
Well, look, I need a verbal affirmation from Jack that he will answer it. Otherwise, I'm not going to.
Well,
you're dodging.
So Jack, are you ready to answer my question?
No, I'm not interested. I'm interested in getting
I'm not interested either then. Too bad. You're lost.
You think that it's somehow like a great disappointment to me that you dodge a question?
I find it quite disappointing, your behavior, Jack.
You think that I'm concerned about disappointing you?
Jack, you're very disappointing.
You think that I'm concerned about disappointing you?
Yeah, you're a disappointing fool, Jack.
You think that I'm concerned about disappointing you?
Jack, yeah, you're a disappointment.
You think that I'm concerned about disappointing you?
I bet you your parents are ashamed of you, Jack.
And I should be interested in the beliefs of a stupid person?
And it takes one to know one, Jack.
Okay.
So you're saying that in order for me to think that you're stupid, I'd have to be stupid too?
Jack, you're stupid.
And I should take seriously the beliefs of a stupid person?
Why should I take seriously your idiotic beliefs?
I don't expect a stupid person to take seriously the facts, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't expect a stupid person like you to appreciate the facts. I agree.
And I should take seriously
It's
the
just
opinions
your
of a
question.
stupid person.
Your question is
Jack's a little
Your
retard.
question is something like, if you put a clock in a time machine and go backwards in time, will the clock turn backwards? That's your question?
Well, of course it would not turn backwards.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
I know that
You
for
have
a
a
fact.
fucking time machine to test that with?
I know that for a fact.
Is that something that you know a priori?
I know for a fact.
Is that something that you know a priori?
No,
Hey,
it's not a priori at all, but I know that for a fact that it would not.
So if it's not a priori, you must know it a posteriori, right? So you have a fucking time machine to test that shit with?
That's a false dichotomy.
Oh, there are things that are neither a posteriori nor a priori?
It's either a posteriori nor a priori.
Oh, yeah?
What is it? So you don't know it.
Category.
So look, like I said, the thing is, so Josh, could you describe to me why the clock would run backwards?
Wait, we're trying to get straight on what it means for something to
Dude,
be
this
neither
is shit if I can or cannot.
or a posteriori.
Yeah, so Jack, that shows that the clock is not representing its travel through time. It's going backwards in time, but yet the clock is going to still keep running forwards.
You're getting ahead of yourself. Right now, what we're trying to figure out is what it means for a proposition to be neither a priori nor a posteriori.
It just means that I'm right.
So there are three types of propositions.
Yeah,
A priori,
reading
propositions
the phone
that
book.
are known a priori.
Jack reading the phone book. Jack reading the phone book, guys. This is just Jack reading the phone book.
And propositions that Aestus is correct about. Is that the claim?
Yep. Yeah, that is the claim.
And you're saying you're not a stupid person?
No, I'm right. I'm right by definition, Jack.
Well, stop clocks are right twice a day.
So anyway, Jack, as I was saying,
Josh,
you know for a fact that a clock. Jack, you know for a fact that a clock inside of a time machine going backwards would not run backwards.
Is that an a posteriori or a priori fact?
Yeah,
it's both. Wait, it's both plus a bullshiriori, right?
No, it's ace priori.
Ace priori. Thank you, Joe. You're right. It's ace priori. Exactly, Joe. It's ace priori.
You just listen. You're just making shit up. You think
so? We have a person here.
I'm waiting for Jack to stop dodging, and yes, I'm bullshitting while Jack is dodging.
So we have a person here.
And reading the phone book. Jack is reading the phone book.
Can somebody mute Aestus while I'm talking? So we have a person here. We have a person here who was boasting a few minutes ago that he was really smart. Yet he thinks clocks don't measure time, and he thinks there are propositions that are neither a priori nor a posteriori. That's what we're dealing with.
He also thinks he knows what would happen.
This guy right here who thinks he's really smart, but you know, can't make his own money, is a communist.
Enumerating his failings. So right.
Good afternoon, boys and girls.
So not only that, but he also thinks that he can know what's going to happen with a time machine. Not a priori, not a posteriori, even and having no experience with any sort of time machine. He thinks he can make justifiable claims about what would occur with a fucking time machine. That's a fucking retarded thing to think.
How's everybody doing on this fine and lovely day that the Lord has made? Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Howdy, Miss Molly.
Shut up, fat man. I hope your wife dies.
Oh, Josh. Are you guys ready for me to unmute Ace?
Well, EF is left, so there's no point in talking to him anymore.
Let's go get EF.
No, he's not anywhere.
Aces, why would you say something so blatantly
dodging. Jack has wasted.
I don't think he stops talking when I mute him. I think he just continues on.
I'm just confused why you would say something so obvious.
I do.
See, he doesn't know when I'm going to unmute him, but he's still talking.
Jack
And see what I mean? Is that brilliant? It's like, watch, we can play this game.
That's so funny.
You guys want to go talk to Falcon instead of this clown?
Yeah.
Bye, Asus.
Wait, where are we going?
Later, faggots.
You'll recover
Repent
from
or
this,
perish.
Asus. In time, you'll
Well,
recover.
Justin, I've got a question for you, Justin.
Go ahead.
So, like I said, why do you think Jack just spent 30 minutes dodging a simple question?
What was the question?
Okay, so very simple. So you put a clock inside of a time machine, and the time machine now starts going backwards in the time dimension. I know for a fact that the clock would not start running backwards. It would continue to run forwards inside of the time machine. So thus this shows that the clock is not measuring its movement through time.
Wait, how do you know that?
So if you went into a time machine and went back in time, why wouldn't you get younger?
You wouldn't. You wouldn't get younger.
Because there's a special force field keeping you safe in this imaginary time machine in your imagination.
Yeah.
So,
So
would that not apply to the clock as well?
Well, no, look, that's what I'm getting at, Molly, right? Is that the clock is not measuring time itself. It's just this mechanism that runs forward in time, right? And that so for a clock to actually measure time, there's some kind of hypothetical device that we can put in the time machine that would display time running backwards. That would be a measurement of time, I would argue. But a mere clock with a pendulum is not measuring time. It's dividing the day. Look, when people are saying that they're giving a measurement of time, they're just counting off these divisions.
Isn't that what any measurement would be?
No.
No. I think Jack would say though, say if you take the clock in the time machine and it doesn't spin backwards, and we go, look, it's not measuring time, or Jack would say it's not an accurate tool anymore.
Well, I wanted to hear it from Jack. I wanted to hear it from Jack, but I think Jack is smart enough to realize that he has no good answer to that.
I mean,
this is I've got a better one though.
An example of
So,
magic. So, like, presumably the clock in the time machine wouldn't be measuring the clock of the time that it's traveling through. Otherwise, the time machine itself would be subject to that time, and you would be going back in time. In other words, age-wise. So, in order for a time machine to work, how we conceptualize it, the time in the time machine, quote unquote, would need to be something that is uninterrupted, while the rest of the time is rewinding or going forward.
Yeah, that could be possible.
Got him.
But look, like I said, the whole point though is that given a time machine, there is a hypothetical device that could display the current time and also display time running backwards. that I would argue is actually measuring time in an absolute sense. But a clock is just a mechanism that has an oscillator in it and a special synchronized display that is synchronized with the spin of the Earth. That's all a clock is. A clock isn't doing some kind of metaphysical thing where
ways
it's
of measuring
peering into the flow of time.
Well, if you really think about it, what a clock is actually measuring is some other clock. That's all clocks measure is other clocks. So, like, if you were to
really?
Well, think about it. So, like, scientifically, the way that we determine a second is by the decay state of, I can't remember what atom.
It's rubidium.
No, because we base it on Veyd. We base it on
Veyd. Wait, real quick.
Isn't it also true?
Would it
We
not
base it on
measure
Veyd.
the passage of time?
Can I not say what I was going to say? So, like,
Yeah.
if we ultimately define a second as the decay state of
We don't.
rubidium or whatever, scientifically speaking, the SI
We do
unit
now.
of a
No, we
second-
use that.
Yeah.
We
No,
did, but
it's
we
based on
originally
the
used it as a
sun.
day.
You guys know that.
Anyway, what I'm saying still holds true. Like, if you're talking about a clock measuring time, if you're comparing it against anything else, it's just an infinite regress of measuring other clocks.
Yeah, and rulers are just an infinite regress of measuring yardsticks with the
Well,
term.
really, actually, when you get down to
Guilty.
brass tacks, if clocks actually are measuring other clocks, all things become clocks. A ruler would be a clock.
What the fuck are you talking
Yeah, I
about,
don't.
man?
Well, right,
I don't
and
think
I
it's
was giving an example of a really convoluted clock, that was basically just a motor with a series of panels that was miles long, and it would, these series of panels would rotate through their track once every 24 hours. I mean, can you argue that that thing is measuring time? It's not. It's just a motor with panels on a chain. That's all it is.
If you're monitoring the frequency of the cycles of the train, right, to measure time, then yeah, that's what you're using it for.
Right, so if you have a clock in isolation and nothing to compare it against, then how do you know it's actually sampling time? The only way that you know that it's actually
because it's
sampling
the
time is by
phenomenon
comparing
that
it to
we're
some
trying to
other clock.
measure.
There is no phenomenon as time.
You're calibrating it
The
against
phenomenon
other
of time is an illusion that we
What the
come
fuck
up with.
are you
Just
talking
be
about,
quiet
dude?
and I'll tell you, dumb fuck.
Holy shit.
Time is an illusion that we apply in an ad hoc fashion to the movement of things we observe. It is
Really?
always relational and never absolute. So we're never actually sampling some quality called time. We're just
Right,
comparing the relative motion of objects.
and rulers aren't absolute because you can't get it down to the atom. Because heat expands the ruler, and so the ruler will never be fully absolute and accurate.
You'll never be able to align the ruler 100%.
Oh,
wow!
no.
I guess
And if
not
that
I'm
ruler
so
is
afraid.
traveling
What
at
do
the
I
speed of
do with my
light, you wouldn't
life?
be able to measure it anyway.
It's not like we're trying to measure a property of something. Holy fuck.
Well,
dude.
you are actually, and if you're talking about
No,
the
that's
property
exactly
of the
what I'm
thing that
saying. You're measuring a property